She saw a necklace that should have been buried with her husband, hanging on the chest of a man the world was already judging. At a luxury Manhattan gala, billionaire Evelyn Carter freezes when she recognizes a small silver anchor around a quiet Navy dad's neck, the same one she believed was lost with her husband a decade ago. But as the room turns cold with suspicion, the man doesn't defend himself. He simply stands still, protecting his daughter, carrying a truth no one is ready to hear. And in that moment, everything Evelyn thought she knew about love, loss, and the night her husband died begins to fall apart. The ballroom glowed like a polished jewel suspended above Manhattan, its crystal chandeliers scattering light across marble floors that had never known a stain. Outside, the city hummed, yellow cabs sliding past wet pavement, distant sirens echoing between glass towers. But inside, everything felt insulated, hushed, curated. Wealth had a way of softening sound. Evelyn Carter stood near the tall windows, a flute of champagne resting untouched in her hand. The skyline stretched behind her like a promise she had already fulfilled. 52 years old, and she had built an empire that people whispered about in boardrooms and envied in quiet conversations. Her name sat on buildings now. Her decisions moved markets, and yet tonight, she felt none of it. Across the room, laughter rose and fell like a tide she wasn't part of. Women in silk gowns leaned toward one another, exchanging stories about foundations and charity auctions, about the right causes and the right people to be seen beside. Men in tailored tuxedos checked their watches between conversations, already halfway to their next deal. Evelyn knew how to exist in rooms like this. She had learned long ago how to make her face listen, while her mind drifted somewhere safer. Tonight, it drifted to a shoreline, a memory, wind, salt in the air, a man laughing as he burned breakfast for the third Sunday in a row, insisting it was perfect this time. She could still hear his voice. That was the cruel part. 10 years gone, and she could still hear him as if he had just stepped out of the room. "Mrs. Carter?" the voice snapped her back. A woman with diamonds at her throat was smiling politely, waiting to be acknowledged. Evelyn blinked once, twice, then slipped her practiced smile back into place. "I'm sorry," she said smoothly. "Long week. It was always a long week." The woman continued speaking. Something about a new hospital wing, something about impact and legacy. Evelyn nodded at the right moments, her expression attentive, her mind already slipping away again. And then it happened. It was nothing at first, just a movement near the far end of the ballroom, a man bending slightly, speaking to a small child, a detail too ordinary to matter. Except something pulled at her attention. Her eyes shifted, just for a second. The man wore a navy dress uniform, pressed, clean, but not new. The fabric had the subtle signs of wear that no one here would ever recognize. The cuffs had been repaired. The fit was slightly off, like it had been adjusted more than once instead of replaced. Evelyn noticed things like that. 30 years of negotiations had trained her to. And then she saw the chain. It hung just outside the collar, where it didn't belong, a small glint of silver catching the light. Her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. But she was already staring now, her body turning before her mind could stop it. The room seemed to tilt, voices stretching thin and distant as if she were underwater. The man straightened, his daughter still holding his hand. The chain shifted with the motion, and the charm came into full view. A small silver anchor. Evelyn's fingers went numb. She knew that anchor, not just the shape, not just the shine, the flaw. There was a tiny scratch along the lower edge, barely visible unless you knew where to look. She had cried when it happened, years ago. He had laughed, told her it made it theirs, that anchor had been buried. With him. The glass slipped from her hand. It hit the marble floor and shattered, the sound sharp as a gunshot in the quiet elegance of the room. Champagne splashed across her shoes, across the hem of her gown, but she didn't feel it. Heads turned. Music faltered. Somewhere, someone said her name. Evelyn Carter didn't hear any of it. She was already moving. At first it was a walk, fast, determined. Then faster. Her heels struck the marble in hard, echoing beats, cutting through conversations, through polite smiles, through the invisible boundaries that separated people in rooms like this. People stepped aside without thinking. There was something in her face that made them. The man looked up, just as the space around him fell quiet. His daughter tightened her grip on his hand, sensing something she couldn't name. Evelyn reached him in seconds. Her hand shot out and closed around his wrist. "Take it off," she said. Her voice didn't sound like her own. It was low, shaking, raw in a way she hadn't allowed it to be in years. "Take that necklace off. Right now." The little girl flinched. A ripple moved through the crowd. Shock, curiosity, judgment. Phones lifted slightly, discreetly. Eyes sharpened. The man didn't pull away. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. A stranger grabbing you in a room full of power and wealth. Most people would react. Pull back, defend themselves, raise their voice. He did none of that. He just looked at her. Calm, steady, tired maybe, but not afraid. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I think there's been a mistake." His voice was even, controlled. The kind of voice built from years of choosing restraint over reaction. Evelyn's grip tightened. "There's no mistake," she snapped, her other hand already lifting, finger pointing toward the chain. "That anchor, there's a scratch on the bottom edge, right there, isn't there?" Her hand trembled so violently she had to force it still. "Where did you get it?" she demanded. "Where did you get that necklace?" The girl pressed closer to him now, half hidden behind his side. He glanced down at her for a brief second, something soft flickering across his face, then looked back at Evelyn, still calm, still steady. "I've had it a long time," he said. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." The room held its breath. Evelyn felt it. 300 people pretending not to watch, every single one of them watching. Her chest tightened, the air coming shallow and fast. "I buried that necklace," she said, her voice breaking despite herself. "I buried it with my husband 10 years ago." A murmur rippled outward, low and electric. For the first time, something shifted in the man's expression. Not fear, recognition. "How do you know about the scratch?" he asked quietly. Evelyn swallowed hard. "Because I put it there." The words landed between them, heavy and undeniable. Salanas followed. Not the polite silence of wealth and etiquette, but something deeper, something that pressed against the walls and refused to move. The man's shoulders lowered just slightly, as if a weight he had been carrying had suddenly changed shape. "My name is Marcus Reed," he said. Evelyn barely heard it. "I don't know your husband," he continued, "but I think we need to talk somewhere else." She stared at him, her grip still locked around his wrist, her mind racing to catch up with what her eyes had already decided was impossible. The little girl peeked out from behind him, her small face pale but curious now, her fingers clutching the fabric of his uniform. Evelyn's gaze flickered to her. Something cold and sharp pierced through the chaos in her chest. Guilt. For a brief second, everything slowed. The room, the noise, the weight of a decade pressing in on her. She released his wrist, but she didn't step back. "There's a room," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Off the main hall." Marcus nodded once. "Then let's go." He turned slightly, crouching down to meet his daughter's eyes, his voice dropping into something softer, steadier. "Hey," he murmured. "You're okay. I've got you. Just stay close, all right?" The girl nodded, though her grip didn't loosen. Evelyn watched them for a second longer than she meant to. A father, a child, a quiet kind of strength she didn't recognize in the world she lived in. Then she turned and led the way. Behind them, the ballroom slowly exhaled, but the question remained, hanging heavy in the air, impossible to ignore. How did a dead man's necklace find its way onto the chest of a stranger who didn't seem like a thief at all? The double doors to the private corridor closed with a soft click, muffling the hum of wealth behind them. The air changed instantly, cooler, quieter, real. Evelyn walked ahead without looking back, her heels echoing down the narrow hallway lined with muted paintings and discreet lighting. The polished calm of the gala dissolved into something sharper now, more fragile. Her chest still rose too fast, her fingers still trembling despite the effort to steady them. She had built her life on control. Right now, she had none. Behind her, Marcus followed at an even pace, not slow, not rushed. His hand rested lightly on his daughter's shoulder as they walked, guiding her more by presence than force. The little girl, Lila, stayed close, her eyes darting between the unfamiliar walls and the woman leading them. Evelyn pushed open the door to a small conference room tucked off the main hall. Dark wood table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. No chandeliers here, no audience. She stepped inside and turned. For the first time since the ballroom, the three of them stood in stillness. Up close, Marcus looked different. The uniform was clean, but worn in ways the ballroom had missed, the kind of wear that came from years of use, not neglect. His posture was straight, shoulders squared, but there was a quiet fatigue in his eyes, like someone who had learned to carry weight without showing it. And the necklace. It rested against his chest, as if it had always belonged there. Evelyn's breath caught again. "Take it off," she said, softer this time, but no less urgent. Marcus didn't move. "Ma'am," he replied gently, "I'm not trying to disrespect you, but I'm not taking it off until I understand what's happening here." The calm in his voice should have eased her. Instead, it made her angrier. "You don't understand," she snapped, stepping closer. "That necklace belonged to my husband. I buried him with it. I watched them seal the coffin." Her voice cracked at the last word. Lila flinched. Marcus's gaze flickered down to his daughter for just a moment, then back up. "She's scared," he said quietly. Evelyn blinked, thrown by the shift. "What, my daughter?" Marcus repeated, his tone steady but firm. "She doesn't understand why someone's yelling at her dad." The words landed harder than any accusation. Evelyn looked down. Lila stood half-hidden behind him, her small fingers clutching the edge of his jacket, her eyes wide and uncertain. Not defiant, not curious, just scared. For a second, Evelyn saw herself from the outside, a stranger in a $10,000 dress, grabbing a man, raising her voice, in front of a child. Something cold and sharp moved through her chest. Shame, her shoulders dropped just slightly. She started, then stopped. She hadn't apologized in a long time, not like this. "I didn't mean to frighten you," she said finally, her voice quieter now, directed at the girl. I saw something I wasn't expecting." Lila didn't answer, but her grip on Marcus loosened just a little. Marcus nodded once, acknowledging the shift. "Thank you," he said. The room settled. Not calm exactly, but no longer on the edge of breaking. Evelyn drew in a breath, forcing herself back to the reason they were here. "That necklace," she said, more controlled now, "has a scratch along the bottom edge. A small one. It's barely visible unless you know where to look." Marcus didn't interrupt. "I gave it to my husband 20 years ago," she continued. "He dropped it the morning I handed it to him. I cried. He laughed, said it made it ours." Her voice softened without her permission. "I haven't seen it since the day he died." Silence stretched between them. Marcus reached up slowly, not removing the necklace, just touching it lightly between his fingers, as if feeling the weight of it in a new way. There is a scratch, he admitted. Evelyn's heart pounded. So you see why I need to know, she pressed. Where did you get it? Marcus didn't answer right away. He pulled out a chair and sat down, the movement unhurried, deliberate. Not defensive, not evasive, grounded. Lila climbed into the seat beside him, still watching Evelyn carefully, but no longer hiding. Marcus rested his forearms on the table, hands loosely clasped. I've had it 12 years, he said. Evelyn froze. 12, her voice caught. That's not possible. It is for me, he replied. That's not an answer, it's the truth. Frustration surged again, sharp and immediate. You expect me to believe that? Evelyn demanded. That you just happened to have my husband's necklace for 12 years and never once thought to. I didn't know it was your husband's. The interruption was quiet, but it stopped her cold. Marcus met her eyes, not challenging, not apologizing. Just steady, I didn't know his name, he said. Evelyn stared at him. What? I didn't know who he was, Marcus repeated. Not then, not after. Not until you walked across that room and told me about the scratch. The words didn't make sense. Not yet. Evelyn shook her head slowly, trying to force them into something logical. That's not possible, she said again, softer now, almost to herself. He died in an official operation, a helicopter rescue off the coast. It was all documented. There were reports. Marcus's expression shifted. Not much. Just enough. That's not what happened, he said. The room went still. Evelyn felt something inside her tighten, like a thread pulled too far. What do you mean? She asked. Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair, exhaling once through his nose, as if deciding something. I mean, he said carefully, the man who gave me this necklace didn't die in a helicopter. Evelyn's stomach dropped. He died in the water. The words hit like a physical force. For a moment she couldn't speak, couldn't think. The version of the past she had lived with for 10 years. The official story, the clean narrative, the one that had been handed to her in neat, controlled pieces, wavered. You're wrong, she said, but there was no conviction left in it. Marcus didn't argue. I might be, he said, but I don't think so. Lila shifted beside him, glancing up at her father. Daddy, she whispered. He placed a hand gently over hers. I've got you, he murmured. The same words, the same tone, simple, certain. Evelyn felt her chest tighten again, but not from anger this time, from something else, something she hadn't let herself feel in years. If you're going to tell me I'm wrong about how my husband died, she said, her voice low and unsteady, then you need to tell me what really happened. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, measuring. Not her status, not her money, her. You're not going to like it, he said. Evelyn let out a breath that trembled despite her effort to steady it. I haven't liked anything about this night so far, she replied. A faint, almost invisible flicker of something crossed Marcus's face. Not amusement, understanding. He nodded once. All right, he said. He glanced at Lila, then back at Evelyn. But I'm going to need you to stay calm, he added, because what I'm about to tell you, it changes things. Evelyn felt the floor shift beneath her again, even though she hadn't moved. Then tell me, she said. Marcus took a breath, and for the first time since she had seen the necklace, Evelyn realized something that made her pulse spike all over again. He wasn't afraid of her. He wasn't impressed by her. He wasn't trying to take anything from her. He was about to give her something instead, something she had been missing for 10 years, the truth. And somehow, that was far more terrifying. Because if he was right, then everything she believed about the night her husband died was a lie. The words didn't come all at once. They unfolded slowly inside Evelyn's mind, like cracks spreading through glass that had looked perfectly whole a moment ago. She stood there, one hand resting against the edge of the table, her knuckles pale, her breathing shallow. The room felt smaller now, quieter, as if the truth Marcus was about to speak had already begun to push everything else out. "Start at the beginning," she said. Her voice was steady, but only just. Marcus nodded once, as if he had expected that answer. But before he spoke, he reached for the necklace again, this time lifting it slightly away from his chest. The silver anchor swung gently between his fingers, catching the low light from the window. Evelyn's eyes locked onto it. The scratch, it was still there. Exactly where it had been the morning she'd cried over it, standing barefoot in a kitchen that smelled like burnt eggs and cheap coffee. She'd remembered the way Daniel had laughed, brushing off her worry like it was nothing. "It's just a mark," he had said. "Now it's ours." She had believed him then. She had believed a lot of things back then. Marcus lowered the necklace again, letting it settle back against his uniform. 12 years ago, he began, I wasn't where I am now. I wasn't a father. I wasn't even close. His voice was calm, but there was something under it. Something worn, something lived through. I was stationed along the Jersey coast. Junior crew, mostly search and rescue support. Long hours of waiting, short bursts where everything mattered all at once. Evelyn said nothing. She didn't interrupt. She couldn't. There was a storm that came in fast, Marcus continued. Not the kind you plan for. The kind that shows up wrong. Forecast said light winds, turned into something else. He paused, his gaze drifting, not away from her, but inward. Dispatch started lighting up, calls from all along the coast. Boats struggling, cars pulled over, people caught in places they shouldn't have been. Evelyn felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't the version she had been given. There was one call, Marcus said. Car off a cliff road. Guardrail failed, family trapped, water rising. The words were simple, but the image they created wasn't. Evelyn could see it. Dark waves crashing below, headlights cutting through rain, metal twisted at the edge of something that could give way at any second. We got there fast, Marcus said, or as fast as we could in that kind of weather. He let out a quiet breath, and there was already someone there. Evelyn's throat tightened. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, Marcus said, before any official crew got down that slope, there was a man already climbing it. Silence filled the room. Evelyn felt it settle into her chest like weight. He wasn't in uniform, Marcus went on. No gear, no backup. Just a jacket that was already soaked through. Her fingers curled slightly against the table. No one told him to go, Marcus added. No one asked him to. He just saw people who needed help, and he went. Evelyn closed her eyes for a second. That sounded like him, too much like him. I thought he was crazy, Marcus said, a faint trace of something almost like a smile crossing his face. I remember thinking, whoever that guy is, he's going to get himself killed. He shook his head slightly, so I went after him. The room seemed to hold its breath. We got down there together, Marcus said. Car was pinned, doors jammed, water coming up faster than it should have. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You don't think in moments like that, he continued. You just move. He was already at the back door, trying to pry it open. I got beside him, and we started working. Evelyn's heart pounded now, each beat louder than the last. There were kids in the car, Marcus said. 2 of them, maybe 3, hard to tell in the dark. They were crying, panicking. He paused. And that's when I heard it. Evelyn leaned forward without realizing she was doing it. He kept talking to them, Marcus said, calm, steady, like none of it was happening. His eyes lifted to hers. He told them, being brave means you're scared, but you do it anyway. The words landed again, but this time they didn't just echo, they rooted. Evelyn's breath caught, and this time it didn't come back right away. "That's him," she whispered. "That's exactly him." Marcus nodded slowly. "I figured it might be," he said. He leaned back slightly in his chair, his gaze distant again. "We got the door open," he continued. "Started pulling them out. One at a time. He handed them to me. I got them up the slope." His voice tightened, just a fraction. Every time he passed one up, he said the same thing. Same words, over and over. Evelyn's eyes filled, but she didn't wipe the tears away. "Keep going," she said softly. Marcus nodded. "We got all of them out," he said. "Every single one." A pause. For a second I thought that was it. Thought we were done. He looked down at his hands, but the ground, it didn't hold. The words were quiet, but they hit harder than anything before them. "The road started to give," Marcus said. "Rock, asphalt, everything shifting. I was too close to the edge." Evelyn's chest tightened painfully. And then Marcus stopped. For the first time since he started speaking, his voice faltered. "Just a little." "He grabbed me," he said. Evelyn's vision blurred. "What? He grabbed me?" Marcus repeated. "Didn't hesitate? Didn't think about it. Just grabbed my jacket and threw me uphill." He lifted one hand slightly, as if remembering the motion, used the last solid ground under his feet to do it. Evelyn shook her head, barely aware of the movement. "No," she whispered. "No." Marcus met her eyes. He smiled, he said. The room went completely still. "He smiled when he did it," Marcus continued, his voice rougher now, like he already knew how it was going to end, and he was okay with it. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. "And then the ground gave," Marcus said. "Silence, heavy, absolute. He was gone before we could get back down there," Marcus finished. "Water took everything." Evelyn didn't move, didn't speak. Tears slid down her face without resistance, without control. For 10 years, she had imagined a helicopter, a clean story, a controlled loss, a version of events that made sense on paper. This was something else entirely. This was messy. This was human. This was him. "He didn't die alone," Marcus said quietly. Evelyn's shoulders shook. "He wasn't afraid," Marcus added. "Not the way I saw it." She let out a sound, half sob, half breath, as if something inside her had finally broken open after being sealed too long. For 10 years, she had carried one version of his last moments. Now she was hearing another, and it was changing everything. Marcus reached up slowly and took the necklace off. The chain slid free with a soft metallic whisper. He held it out across the table. "I didn't know his name," he said. "Not until tonight." The anchor rested in his open palm, the small scratch catching the light one last time. Evelyn stared at it. Her instinct, her first instinct, was to take it, to reclaim it, to pull it back into her life, into her version of the past. But something stopped her, something she couldn't quite name. Instead, she looked up at Marcus. "You kept it," she said. "It wasn't a question." He nodded. "For 12 years, she added, another nod. "Why?" Marcus glanced down at the necklace, then back at her. "Because he saved my life," he said simply. No embellishment, no drama, just truth. Evelyn felt something shift again. Quieter this time, but deeper. For a decade, she had thought she was the only one carrying Daniel, the only one holding on to what he had been. But she wasn't. This man, this stranger who had walked into a room where he didn't belong, been judged before he spoke, and still stood there without anger, had been carrying a piece of him all along. In silence, without recognition, without reward. Evelyn looked at the necklace again, then back at Marcus. And for the first time since she saw him, she didn't see a stranger, She saw the last person who had been with her husband, and that realization was heavier than anything she had felt all night, because it meant there was more truth, more pieces she had never been given, and she wasn't sure she was ready for any of it. But she also knew she couldn't walk away now. The silence in the room lingered longer than either of them expected. Evelyn stood there, her hand still hovering slightly above the table, as if she had almost reached for the necklace and stopped at the last second. The city lights outside the window flickered faintly across the glass, reflections shifting as cars moved below, life continuing, indifferent to the storm that had just begun inside her. Marcus didn't push the necklace any closer. He didn't pull it back either. He simply held it there, waiting. Lila swung her legs lightly under the chair, her small shoes tapping softly against the polished wood. The sound was quiet, almost out of place in the heavy stillness. She looked from her father to Evelyn and back again, trying to make sense of something far beyond her years. "Daddy," she whispered. Marcus turned his head immediately, the tension in his posture easing the second he looked at her. "I'm right here, I'd said, his voice dropping into that same calm tone. "You okay?" She nodded, though she didn't look entirely sure. "Is she mad at you?" Lila asked, glancing cautiously at Evelyn. The question hung in the air, innocent and direct. Evelyn felt it hit her harder than anything else had so far. "No," she said quickly, before Marcus could answer. Her voice softened as she crouched slightly to be closer to the girl's level. "I'm not mad at your dad." Lila studied her face, searching for something. Truth, maybe. Children had a way of seeing past what adults tried to hide. "Then why were you yelling?" she asked. Evelyn hesitated. "Because I thought he took something from me. Because I've been living with the wrong version of the truth for 10 years. Because I don't know who I am right now if what he said is real." But she didn't say any of that. "I was surprised," she said finally, "and I handled it the wrong way." Lila seemed to consider that, then nodded once, as if that answer made enough sense for now. Marcus watched the exchange quietly, something thoughtful passing behind his eyes. He didn't interrupt, didn't step in. He let Evelyn try. And for some reason, that mattered. Evelyn straightened slowly, her gaze returning to the necklace still resting in his open palm. "You said you didn't know his name," she said. Marcus shook his head. "Not until tonight. And you never tried to find out?" There was no accusation in her voice this time, just curiosity. Maybe even something close to disbelief. Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression shifting into something more reflective. "I tried," he said. "At first." Evelyn waited. "There were reports filed," he continued. "Official ones. They listed a civilian who assisted in the rescue. No name, just unidentified." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "Not possible," she said. "He wasn't unidentified. He had a name, a life." I know," Marcus said gently. "But that's what the record said." She shook her head, a faint edge of panic creeping back in. "There were press releases," she insisted. "Statements. They told you what they wanted the story to be," Marcus said, not unkindly. The words landed with quiet precision. Evelyn felt something inside her resist them, push back, because if she accepted that, if she even allowed it to be true, then everything she had built her grief around would start to fall apart. "I went back to the site," Marcus continued, his voice steady. "A few weeks later, when things had calmed down, Evelyn forced herself to listen, talk to the local crews, the ones who showed up after. They remembered the night, remembered the storm, remembered the family." He paused, but nobody had a name for the man who went down that slope first. Evelyn's throat tightened. "That doesn't make sense," she whispered. "It didn't to me either," Marcus said. Not then. He glanced down at the necklace again. So I kept it. Evelyn frowned slightly. That's not a normal decision, she said. Most people would have turned it in. Evidence. Personal effects. Something. Marcus gave a small shrug. Maybe, he said. But it didn't feel like evidence. He lifted the chain slightly, letting the anchor catch the light. It felt like a reminder. Of what? That I was still here, he said simply. The answer was so direct, so unpolished, that Evelyn didn't have a response ready. Marcus continued, his voice quieter now. There's a moment, right after something like that happens, he said, where everything slows down. You realize how close it was, how easily it could have gone the other way. He met her eyes again. And you start asking yourself what you're going to do with the fact that it didn't. Evelyn felt a subtle shift inside her. Not resistance this time. Recognition, I didn't have answers. Marcus went on, still don't most days. But I knew one thing. He glanced briefly at Lila, then back at Evelyn. I didn't want to waste the life he gave me. The room grew quiet again. Not heavy this time. Still. Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't allowed herself to see before. Not just a man in a worn uniform, not just a stranger holding something that belonged to her past, but a man who had carried a moment, one moment, for 12 years, and let it shape everything that came after. You built your life on that? She asked softly. Marcus shook his head. No, he said. Life doesn't work that clean. A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. I messed up plenty. Lost jobs, made bad calls, spent some nights in places I wouldn't go back to. Evelyn blinked, surprised by the honesty. But every time I thought about giving up, he continued, I remembered that night. His fingers tightened slightly around the chain. I remembered a man who didn't hesitate, didn't ask who I was, didn't ask what he'd get out of it. Evelyn's chest tightened again. He just acted, Marcus said, and he paid the price for it. Silence stretched. And you think that was him? Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus didn't hesitate this time. I know it was, he said. The certainty in his tone left no room for doubt. Evelyn turned away, walking slowly toward the window. The city stretched out below her, endless and alive, lights blinking in patterns that had nothing to do with her life, her loss, or the truth that was unfolding behind her. For 10 years, she had believed in a version of Daniel's death that had been handed to her in clean lines and official language. Now she was standing in a room with a man who had seen something else entirely, something raw, something real, something that felt more like him. She pressed her hand lightly against the glass. He hated the cold, she said suddenly. Marcus didn't respond, but she could feel him listening. Used to complain every winter, she went on. Said he wasn't built for it. Said if we ever made enough money, we'd move somewhere warm. A faint, broken smile crossed her face. We never did. The reflection in the glass showed her own face. Older, harder than she remembered. And you're telling me he walked into a storm, she said. Marcus's voice came from behind her, steady and quiet. I'm telling you, he walked toward people who needed help. Evelyn closed her eyes. That sounded exactly like Daniel. Too much like him. Her shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. When she turned back around, her expression had changed. Not calm, not yet, but focused. You said this changes things, she said. Marcus nodded once. It does. How? He studied her for a moment, as if weighing how much to say. Because if what I saw is the truth, he said carefully, then the story you were told doesn't line up. Evelyn's pulse quickened. In what way? Marcus leaned forward slightly, his forearms resting on the table again. The kind of situation he was in that night, he said. It wouldn't have been classified as an official operation. The words were precise, measured. Evelyn felt the ground shift again beneath her. "What does that mean?" she asked. Marcus held her gaze. "It means," he said, "if he went down there on his own, without orders, without clearance, then it changes how everything gets reported." A pause, and how it gets paid. The room fell silent. Evelyn's mind raced, connecting pieces she hadn't known were there. Insurance, reports, statements, things she had signed without reading, things she had trusted others to handle. Her chest tightened. "Paid," she repeated slowly. Marcus didn't look away. "Yeah," he said. Evelyn felt something cold settle deep inside her. Not grief, not yet. Something sharper, more dangerous. "Then I need to see those reports again," she said. Marcus nodded. "I figured you might." Evelyn glanced once more at the necklace in his hand, then back at him. "And this time," she added quietly, "I'm not signing anything blind." The shift was subtle, but it was there. The woman who had walked into the ballroom earlier that night had been carrying grief. The woman standing here now was starting to look for the truth, and somewhere just beneath the surface, something else was beginning to rise. Anger. And she had a feeling. This was only the beginning. The city outside the glass kept moving, unaware that somewhere above it, a decade-old truth had just cracked open. Evelyn didn't sit down. She remained by the window, one hand resting against the cool surface, her reflection faint against the lights of Manhattan. The woman staring back at her didn't look like the one who had walked into the ballroom an hour ago. There was something sharper now, more alert. Behind her, Marcus stayed seated, his posture relaxed but attentive, as if he understood that the next part mattered even more than what he had already said. "Tell me everything," Evelyn said, not as a demand, as a need. Marcus took a slow breath, glancing briefly at Lila, who had settled into her chair with her small hands folded in her lap. She was watching them both now, quieter, sensing that something important was happening. He turned back to Evelyn. "All right," he said, "but you're going to have to hear it the way it happened, not the way it was cleaned up after." Evelyn nodded once. "I want the truth," she said. Marcus studied her for a moment longer, then began. "The storm hit harder than anyone expected," he said. "Winds picked up fast, waves coming in at angles that didn't match the forecast. It wasn't just bad weather. It was confusion, the kind that makes people freeze." His voice settled into a rhythm now, steady and grounded. "We got the call about the car, and by the time we got close enough to see it, you could already tell it wasn't going to hold." Evelyn didn't move. She could see it now, more clearly than before. The cliffside road, the darkness, the way rain would turn everything slick, unpredictable. There were other people up there, Marcus continued. Drivers who had pulled over. Some tried to help. Most stayed back. Nobody wanted to risk going down that slope in that kind of weather. He paused, except him. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Daniel had never been good at staying back. He didn't hesitate, Marcus said. Didn't look for permission, didn't wait for backup. He just went. The words weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. Evelyn felt them settle into her chest, heavy and undeniable. "I remember thinking he didn't understand how bad it was," Marcus went on. "That he was acting on instinct, not thinking it through." A faint breath of something almost like a laugh escaped him. "I was wrong." Evelyn turned slightly, her eyes finding him again. "What do you mean?" she asked. Marcus leaned forward a fraction, his elbows resting on his knees. "I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing," he said. "He just decided it didn't matter." The room fell quiet again. "That kind of decision," Marcus added, "it doesn't come from panic. It comes from who someone already is, Evelyn swallowed hard. That sounded like Daniel, too much like him. He got to the car before I did, Marcus said. Was already trying to open the back door when I got down there. Hands steady, voice calm, like he'd done it 100 times. Evelyn's chest tightened. He hadn't, she said softly. Marcus nodded. I figured that out later, he replied. But in that moment, it didn't matter. He glanced briefly toward the window, as if seeing something beyond it. We worked together without talking much, he said. Just moving, adjusting, getting people out. Evelyn listened, every detail pulling her further away from the version of events she had lived with for 10 years. There was a moment, Marcus continued, when one of the kids wouldn't let go of the seatbelt. Just froze. Wouldn't move. His voice softened slightly. And your husband? He didn't rush him, didn't pull. He just got close and talked to him. Evelyn's throat tightened. What did he say? She asked. Marcus looked at her. You already know. The answer hit her before the words did. Being brave means you're scared, she whispered. But you do it anyway, Marcus finished. Evelyn closed her eyes. She could hear it now. Not from Marcus, but from memory, the way Daniel used to say it. Half joking, half serious, like it was something he believed even when he didn't want to. That's how he got the kid to move, Marcus said. Not force, not fear, just trust. Evelyn let out a shaky breath. That sounds like him, she said. Marcus nodded. Yeah, he said quietly. It does. The room held that moment for a second longer. Then Marcus continued. We got them out one by one, he said. He handed them up. I pulled them the rest of the way. People at the top started helping once they saw it was possible. Evelyn pictured it. Strangers turning into something more. Drawn in by one man's refusal to stand still. He didn't stop to catch his breath, Marcus added. Didn't step back once the kids were safe. Of course he didn't, Evelyn murmured. Marcus gave her a brief glance. Last one was the mother, he said. She was trapped worse than the others. Door bent in. Took longer. Evelyn felt her hands tighten at her sides. But he got it open, Marcus continued. We both did. A pause. And then, it was over. The words came slower now. Careful. Everyone was out, Marcus said. They were moving them up the slope, getting them clear. Evelyn held her breath. And for a second, Marcus added, it felt like we'd made it. The room seemed to shrink again, but the road didn't care about that, he said. Evelyn's heart pounded. The ground started shifting under us, Marcus continued. You don't always feel it right away. It's subtle at first. Then it isn't. He lifted his hand slightly, as if tracing the memory. I stepped back without thinking, he said. And that's when it gave. Evelyn's chest tightened painfully. I remember the sound, Marcus added quietly. Not loud, just wrong. She could almost hear it, the crack, the shift, the moment everything changes, and then I wasn't on solid ground anymore, he said. Evelyn's breath caught. I was going over, Marcus continued. Didn't even have time to think about it. His voice lowered. And that's when he grabbed me. The memories seemed to settle into the space between them. He didn't hesitate, Marcus said again. Didn't look around, didn't calculate anything. Evelyn's eyes filled. He just acted, she whispered. Marcus nodded. He pulled me back and pushed me up the slope, he said. Used everything he had to do it. A pause. And when I turned back, he stopped. Just for a second, Evelyn felt the weight of what he hadn't said yet. What? She asked softly. Marcus looked at her. He wasn't panicking, he said. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't trying to climb back up. Evelyn's breath trembled. He was steady, Marcus continued. like he'd already made peace with it. Tears slid down Evelyn's face again. "That doesn't make sense," she said. No one just—" "Some people do," Marcus said gently. The room fell silent again. "He looked at me," Marcus added, "right before it went." Evelyn's chest ached, and he smiled. The words landed like a quiet explosion. Not loud, but impossible to ignore. Evelyn covered her mouth, a soft, broken sound escaping before she could stop it. For 10 years, she had imagined fear, loneliness, pain. Now she was hearing something else. Courage, choice, peace, and then he was gone, Marcus finished. No drama, no embellishment, just truth. Evelyn stood there, her entire body trembling now, the version of Daniel she had carried for a decade unraveling piece by piece. "He didn't die the way they told me," she whispered. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Evelyn wiped at her face, though the tears didn't stop. "He didn't die alone," she said again, as if trying to anchor herself to that one piece of reality. "No," Marcus said quietly. "He didn't." Evelyn let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped inside her for years. And for the first time since the night he died, she wasn't picturing a helicopter. She was picturing him, in the rain, on that slope, choosing, and somehow that hurt more. But it also felt truer. She turned back toward Marcus slowly. "There's more," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. "Yeah," he said. Evelyn's eyes hardened slightly, something new forming beneath the grief. "Because if what you're saying is true," she continued, "then someone changed the story." Marcus met her gaze. "That's what it looks like." The air in the room shifted again. This time it wasn't grief filling the space. It was something colder, sharper, and far more dangerous. Evelyn Carter had spent 10 years mourning a loss. Now, she was starting to question it, and she had a feeling the answers weren't going to be kind. Evelyn didn't move for a long moment. The room had gone still again, but this time it wasn't grief holding it there. It was something sharper, colder, like the air just before a storm breaks open. She turned slowly, her eyes no longer clouded with tears, but focused in a way Marcus hadn't seen before. For the first time that night, she didn't look like a woman overwhelmed by loss. She looked like someone who had just realized she had been lied to. "How many reports were filed that night?" she asked. Marcus blinked once, caught off guard by the shift in her tone. "A few," he said. "Coast Guard logs, local incident reports, internal summaries. Standard procedure." Evelyn nodded faintly, already moving past his answer. "And you said the civilian was listed as unidentified," she continued. "That's right." Her jaw tightened. "That's impossible," she said quietly. "Daniel Carter was not unidentified." Marcus didn't argue. He didn't need to. Evelyn turned away again, pacing slowly now, her heels no longer sharp against marble but soft against carpet. Her mind was moving fast, faster than her body could keep up with. "They told me everything was documented," she said, half to herself. "They gave me statements, official language, clean timelines." Her lips pressed into a thin line. They handled the press. Marcus watched her carefully. "Who's they?" he asked. Evelyn stopped walking. For a second, she didn't answer. Then she said, "My husband's family." The words came out flat, controlled. "His father," she added, "his brother, their legal team." Marcus's expression shifted slightly. "Big operation?" he asked. Evelyn let out a short, humorless breath. "You could say that," she replied. "Shipping, logistics, old money that learned how to look modern." Marcus nodded once, filing that away. "And they handled everything after he died?" he asked. "Yes," the answer came quickly, too quickly. Evelyn felt it as soon as she said it. For 10 years, that had been a fact she leaned on. Now it felt like something else. They told me not to worry about the details, she continued, her voice quieter now. Said it would be too much, too soon, that they'd take care of it. Her hands clenched slightly at her sides, and I let them. The admission hung in the air. Marcus didn't respond right away. He could see it happening. The shift from grief to something more complicated, something heavier. Do you remember signing anything? He asked. Evelyn let out a slow breath. Yes, the word carried more weight than it should have. Insurance paperwork, estate documents, statements for the company. I signed a lot of things. She shook her head faintly. I don't even remember most of it. I just signed where they told me to. Marcus leaned back slightly, his gaze thoughtful. That's not unusual, he said. After something like that, people aren't exactly thinking straight. Evelyn looked at him sharply. I wasn't thinking at all, she said. That's the problem. The room went quiet again. Lila shifted in her seat, her small fingers tracing patterns on the edge of the table. The tension in the room was something she could feel, even if she didn't understand it. Marcus reached over and placed his hand lightly over hers. I've got you, he murmured. She nodded, comforted instantly. Evelyn watched the interaction. There it was again, that quiet steadiness, no drama, no performance, just presence. It grounded something in her, even as everything else felt like it was unraveling. She turned back to Marcus. If what you're saying is true, she said, then the official report would have had to change, Marcus nodded. Or the version you were given did, he said. Evelyn's stomach tightened. That's not a small change, she said. That's not rounding off details. That's rewriting the entire event. Marcus met her eyes. Yeah, he said. It is. Silence settled between them again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full of implications. Evelyn walked back to the table slowly, placing both hands on its surface, leaning forward slightly as if anchoring herself. There was an insurance policy, she said. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his posture sharpened. What kind? He asked. A large one, she replied. Key person insurance tied to the company, standard for someone in his position. Marcus nodded. I've heard of that, he said. Evelyn's gaze drifted slightly, her thoughts connecting pieces she hadn't looked at in years. It paid out after his death, she said. Marcus didn't interrupt. It kept everything stable, she continued. The company, the transitions. It protected what we built. Her voice faltered slightly. That's what they told me. Marcus leaned forward a fraction. And if he hadn't died in an official operation, he asked. Evelyn's eyes snapped back to his. She already knew the answer. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. If he died in an unsanctioned situation, she said slowly, then the policy could be void. The words landed heavy. Marcus nodded once. That's how it usually works, he said. The room seemed to tilt again, but this time Evelyn didn't lose her balance. She steadied herself against the table, her mind locking onto the logic of it. If the truth had been reported, she continued, then there might not have been a payout. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to. Evelyn straightened slowly. They didn't just change the story, she said, her voice growing colder. They had a reason to change it. The realization settled in fully now, not as a possibility, as a fact. They didn't lie to protect his memory, she added, her eyes darkening. They lied to protect the money. The words hung in the air like something sharp and irreversible. Marcus watched her carefully. That's one way to look at it, he said. Evelyn shook her head. No, she said. It's the only way that makes sense. She turned away again, pacing once more. But this time there was purpose in it. Direction. For 10 years, she had lived with grief. Now she was standing in something else entirely. Betrayal. They took the way he died, she said. her voice tightening, and turned it into something convenient. Marcus didn't interrupt. They erased what he actually did, she continued. They buried it, replaced it with something that fit their narrative. Her hands clenched again, and I believed them. The last words came out softer, not anger, something closer to disbelief. Marcus leaned back, watching her process it. You trusted them, he said. Evelyn let out a bitter breath. I trusted that no one would lie about something like that, she replied. A pause. That was my mistake. The room fell quiet again. But this time it wasn't heavy, it was charged. Evelyn stopped pacing. When she turned back toward Marcus, her expression had changed completely. The grief was still there, but it wasn't leading anymore. What else do you remember? She asked. Marcus tilted his head slightly. About that night, yes. Everything I told you is what I saw, he said. After that, it was recovery efforts, reports, debrief. Evelyn nodded slowly. And the report you filed, she said. The one that listed him as unidentified. That still exists, Marcus hesitated. It should, he said. Military records don't just disappear. Evelyn held his gaze. Then I need it. Marcus studied her for a moment. You're thinking of reopening this, he said. I'm thinking of finding out the truth, she replied. A pause. And if that means reopening it, then yes. Marcus glanced at Lila, then back at Evelyn. That's not a small thing, he said. Once you start pulling on something like this, it doesn't stay quiet. Evelyn's lips pressed together. Good, she said. The word came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't take it back. I've been living in silence for 10 years, she continued. I'm done with that. Marcus nodded slowly. There it was, the shift. Not just a woman learning the truth, a woman deciding what to do with it. Lila looked between them again, her small voice breaking into the tension. Are we in trouble? She asked. Marcus turned to her immediately, his expression softening. No, he said gently. We're not in trouble. She looked at Evelyn. Are you? She asked. Evelyn paused. The question caught her off guard. For a second, she didn't know how to answer. Then she gave a small, honest smile. I don't know yet, she said. Lila seemed to accept that. Marcus exhaled quietly. That's probably the most honest answer in the room, he said. Evelyn met his eyes again. There was no hostility there now, no suspicion, just something steady, mutual. We're going to find out, she said. Marcus nodded once. All right, he replied. Outside, the city lights flickered on, one by one, as night settled fully over Manhattan. Inside the small conference room, 3 lives, one built on power, one built on survival, and one just beginning, sat at the edge of something none of them could fully see yet. But one thing was certain. The story Evelyn had been given 10 years ago was no longer enough. And whatever the truth turned out to be, it was going to change everything. But the truth didn't begin in the courtroom. It didn't begin in a report. It began in places no one in that Manhattan ballroom had ever bothered to look. 3 days later, the skyline was gone, replaced by rusted fire escapes, cracked sidewalks, and the low hum of a neighborhood that didn't pretend to be anything more than what it was. Brooklyn. Evelyn Carter sat in the back of a black sedan, her fingers resting lightly against the window as the city blurred past. The glass reflected her face, composed, unreadable, but her eyes were sharper now. Focused, she wasn't dressed for a gala, no diamonds, no silk, just a simple coat, dark and understated. Invisible. Or at least she was trying to be. The driver slowed near a corner where a flickering neon sign buzzed above a narrow storefront. Community Kitchen, it read. The car came to a stop. Evelyn didn't move right away. For a moment, she just watched. People moved in and out of the building, some carrying groceries, others just walking in with empty hands and tired faces. No one looked like they belonged in the world she came from. And yet, there was something steady about it, something real. "Ma'am?" the driver asked gently. Evelyn blinked. "I'll be fine," she said. "You can wait here." She stepped out into the cold. The air hit her differently here, sharper, carrying the smell of cooking oil and damp pavement. Somewhere down the block, a bus hissed to a stop, doors opening with a tired groan. She pulled her coat tighter and walked toward the kitchen. Inside, the warmth hit her immediately. Not polished warmth like in a penthouse lobby. This was different, messy, alive. The sound of dishes clinking, voices overlapping, laughter cutting through exhaustion. And there, at the far end of the room, Marcus Reed stood behind a long counter, sleeves rolled up, moving with quiet efficiency. He wasn't in uniform now, just a worn gray shirt and jeans that had seen better days. But there was something about him that hadn't changed, that same calm, that same steadiness. He handed a tray to an elderly man, crouching slightly to meet his eyes as he spoke. "You good, Mr. Thompson?" Marcus asked. The man nodded, his hands shaking slightly as he took the plate. "Better now," he said. "You always make sure of that." Marcus gave a small smile. "Just doing my part." Evelyn stood just inside the doorway, unnoticed, watching. A young mother approached the counter next, a toddler on her hip, another child clinging to her coat. Marcus didn't just hand over food. He leaned in, speaking softly to the kids, making them smile before they even realized they were hungry. "Hey there," he said gently. "You saving some room for dessert?" The little boy's eyes lit up. "There's dessert?" he asked. Marcus grinned. "Always is if you ask the right way." The mother let out a quiet laugh, relief softening her face for the first time. "Thank you," she said. Marcus shook his head. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. "Just come back tomorrow." Evelyn felt something shift in her chest. Not sharp like before, not painful, something quieter. She stepped further inside. Still, no one noticed her. And for once in her life, that didn't bother her. She moved slowly along the wall, her gaze never leaving Marcus. He didn't rush, didn't perform, didn't look around to see who was watching. He just helped, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like it was enough. An older woman near the tables leaned toward another, whispering just loud enough for Evelyn to hear. "That's Marcus," she said. "Man's got nothing, but he gives like he's got everything." The other woman nodded. "He's been here every week for years," she added, "even when he was sleeping in his car." Evelyn's breath caught, sleeping in his car. She looked back at him, at the steady hands, the quiet voice, the way people leaned toward him like they trusted him without question. And suddenly, the image from the gala didn't fit anymore. The whispers, the suspicion, the way people had looked at him like he didn't belong. They hadn't seen this. They hadn't seen him. A small girl ran up behind the counter, slipping past the divider like she'd done it 100 times. "Lila." She tugged lightly on Marcus's shirt. "Dad," she said, "Mrs. Alvarez says her heater's broken again." Marcus didn't even hesitate. "All right," he said. "We'll stop by after this, okay?" Lila nodded, and she asked if you could bring that soup you made last time. Marcus smiled faintly. "Then I guess I better make extra." Evelyn stepped closer. This time he noticed. Marcus looked up, and for just a second, surprise flickered across his face. Then it settled back into that same calm. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. Evelyn glanced around the room. "I didn't expect this," she admitted. Marcus wiped his hands on a towel. "Most people don't," he said simply. There was no bitterness in his voice, no accusation, just truth. Evelyn studied him for a moment. "You do this every week?" she asked. Marcus shrugged slightly. Most weeks, he said, when I'm not deployed or working late. She hesitated. And when you were struggling? He met her eyes. I still showed up, he said. Evelyn's throat tightened. Why? She asked. It wasn't a challenge. It was genuine. Marcus didn't answer right away. He glanced toward Lila, who was now sitting at a table, carefully helping someone older than her hold a cup steady. Then he looked back at Evelyn. Because someone showed up for me once, he said quietly. The words landed deeper than anything else he'd said. Evelyn felt it, that connection again, that invisible thread tying the past to the present. You mean my husband? She said. Marcus nodded once. Yeah, he said. Him. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, just full. Evelyn looked around the room again, at the people eating, laughing, surviving, because someone like Marcus kept showing up. And suddenly, the story started to feel bigger. Not just about what had been taken, but about what had been carried. She turned back to him. They were wrong about you, she said. Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly. Wouldn't be the first time, he replied. Evelyn shook her head. No, she said, not like this. She paused. They looked at you like you didn't belong. Marcus let out a small breath. I'm used to that, he said. The simplicity of it hit her harder than anger would have. Used to it, like it was just part of life. Evelyn's jaw tightened. That's going to change, she said. Marcus studied her for a moment. Maybe, he said. But that's not why I'm here. He gestured toward the room. This is, Evelyn followed his gaze. And for the first time, she understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't about recognition, or reputation, or proving anything. This was about showing up, even when no one was watching, even when no one cared, even when people assumed the worst. Marcus looked back at her. You find what you're looking for? He asked. Evelyn didn't answer right away, because the truth was, she hadn't come here looking for this. She had come for answers, evidence, control. But what she found was something harder to ignore. Not yet, she said finally, her voice softer now. But I think I'm starting to understand what matters. Marcus nodded once, then turned back to the next person in line. Conversation over. No need to stretch it further. Evelyn stood there for a moment longer, watching, learning, and somewhere deep inside, something shifted again. Not just anger, not just grief, respect, and a quiet realization she couldn't shake. The man everyone had doubted might be the only one telling the truth. Outside, the city kept moving, cars passed, lights flickered. Life went on. But inside that small kitchen in Brooklyn, a different kind of story was unfolding. One built not on power, not on money, but on something far harder to fake and far harder to destroy. And Evelyn Carter knew, if she was going to uncover the truth about her husband, she was going to need more than documents. She was going to need Marcus Reed, and the kind of man he chose to be, even when no one was watching. That was what stayed with Evelyn Carter as she left Brooklyn that night. Not the kitchen, not the noise, not even the quiet way Marcus had said her husband's name. It was the way he lived, the way he carried something no one else could see, and never once asked to be rewarded for it. By the time the car pulled back into Manhattan, the city looked different, sharper, colder, like something polished on the surface, but hollow underneath. Evelyn stepped out onto the sidewalk in front of her building, the doorman straightening immediately as she approached. Good evening, Miss Carter. She nodded, her expression unreadable. Inside, everything was exactly as she had left it. Soft lighting, clean marble floors, silence. But it no longer felt like home. It felt staged, like a place where truth had been carefully managed. She didn't go upstairs. Instead, she turned toward her office. The elevator ride was quiet, the faint hum of machinery the only sound as she watched the numbers climb. 40, 41, 42. At the top, the doors opened into a private floor, glass walls overlooking the city, lights stretching endlessly into the distance. This was her world, or at least it had been. Evelyn walked straight to her desk and sat down, pulling open a drawer she hadn't touched in years. Inside were files, old ones, labeled neatly, untouched since the weeks after Daniel's death. Her hand hovered for a moment. Then she pulled them out, one by one. The paper felt heavier than it should have. She opened the first folder. Insurance documentation, corporate transitions, legal summaries. Her signature, clean, precise, repeated over and over again. But the details blurred because she hadn't read them, not really. Back then, she had been too broken to look closely. Now, she read every word. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2. The city outside dimmed as night deepened, and slowly, the cracks began to show, a date that didn't line up, a report that referenced an operation number that didn't exist anywhere else, a clause. Her hand froze on the page. There it was again, clear as day, coverage void in the event of death occurring during unsanctioned, voluntary hazardous activity. Evelyn leaned back slowly in her chair, her chest tightened, because now she understood. Not just the possibility, the motive. If Daniel had died doing what Marcus described, if he had climbed into danger on his own, then the policy would never have paid. Her breath came slower now, measured, controlled. They didn't just lie. They needed the lie. A soft knock at the door broke the silence. "Come in," Evelyn said without looking up. Her assistant Claire stepped inside, hesitating when she saw the files spread across the desk. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. Evelyn looked up. "No," she said simply. Claire stepped closer. "What happened?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned the document around, sliding it across the desk. "Read it," she said. Claire leaned in, scanning the clause. Her expression shifted. "That means," she started. Evelyn finished the sentence for her. "It means if the truth had been reported, none of it would have gone through." The room fell quiet. Claire looked back up at her. "You think they knew?" she asked. Evelyn let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "I think they built everything around it," she said. "A beat. I think they buried the truth because it was too expensive to tell." Claire straightened slowly. "That's serious," she said carefully. "It's fraud," Evelyn replied. The word landed hard. "Final." Claire hesitated. "What are you going to do?" Evelyn didn't answer right away, because for the first time, this wasn't just about grief. This was about power, and the people she was about to go up against had a lot of it. "They're going to fight," Claire added quietly. "If this is true, they're not just going to admit it." Evelyn nodded. "I know." She stood up slowly, walking toward the window. The city stretched out below her. Millions of lives, millions of stories, none of them aware of what was about to unfold. "I've spent 10 years thinking I lost him one way," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm, and now I find out they took the truth and turned it into a transaction. Claire didn't speak. She knew better. Evelyn turned back toward her desk. "I want everything," she said. "Every record, every filing, every internal report from that time." Claire nodded immediately. "I'll get legal on it." "And Claire," Evelyn added. "Yes," quietly. Claire paused, then nodded again. Understood. Left the room without another word. Evelyn stood alone again, but not for long, because across the city, the first move had already been made. It came in the morning, not through lawyers, not through formal channels, but through something far more subtle. A headline. Evelyn sat at her kitchen counter, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her, as she scrolled through her phone. At first, it looked like nothing. Just another piece of gossip tucked between business updates and social feeds. Then she saw her name. Her thumb froze. She opened the article. The words were careful, polished. But the message was clear. Billionaire widow seen with Navy officer of questionable background. Her jaw tightened as she read. Sources suggest the relationship may be influencing recent decisions. Questions raised about judgment. Young daughter now residing on Carter property. Grip tightened around the phone. There it was, not a direct attack, a narrative. She scrolled further. Financial disparity between the two. Possible manipulation. Concerns among close associates. Evelyn set the phone down slowly. The room felt colder. They weren't denying the truth. They were discrediting her, before she could speak it, before it could matter. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Claire. You need to see this. It's spreading. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, then opened them, sharp, focused. Across the city, in a small apartment that looked nothing like her world, Marcus Reed read the same article. He stood near the window, the early morning light casting long shadows across the room. Lila sat at the table, drawing quietly. He read every word, slowly, carefully. His expression didn't change much, but something inside him did. Lila looked up. What is it? She asked. Marcus hesitated, then folded the phone and set it down. Nothing you need to worry about, he said gently. She frowned slightly. People talking again? She asked. Marcus gave a faint smile. Yeah, he admitted. She shrugged. They always do. The simplicity of it hit him harder than anything else. They always do. He walked over, kneeling beside her. Hey, he said softly. You remember what we talked about? She nodded. Being brave, she said. Marcus smiled. That's right. She looked up at him. Are we going to be okay? Marcus held her gaze, and for a moment, he thought about walking away, taking the easy way out, protecting her from whatever was coming. But then, he thought about the man in the storm, the one who didn't walk away. I've got you, he said, and this time, there was steel in his voice. Across the city, Evelyn stood in front of the same skyline, holding her phone, reading the same words, and for the first time in 10 years, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a target. And that meant something very simple. The war had already begun. The only question left was how far they were willing to go to keep the truth buried. Evelyn Carter didn't wait. By noon, her office had transformed into something else entirely. No longer a place for polished deals and controlled negotiations. It had become a war room. Papers covered the long glass table. Insurance documents, timelines, internal memos, and printouts Claire had pulled overnight. Screens glowed with search results, archived records, and public filings. But something was still missing. Proof, not theory, not suspicion, something real. Evelyn stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, staring down at a single page. A county report. New Jersey, 12 years old, vehicle accident, Cliffside Road during a storm. She tapped the paper once. 5 civilians, she said quietly. 2 adults, 3 children. Claire nodded. That's what the report shows, she said. No mention of a civilian rescuer. No names beyond the family. Evelyn's jaw tightened. They erased him, she said. Claire didn't argue, because it was obvious now. If Daniel's name had been attached to that report, everything would have unraveled. Eva looked up. Find them, she said. Claire hesitated. That was over a decade ago, she said. People move, records get messy. Evelyn's voice didn't change. Find them. Claire nodded. Okay. She picked up her phone and stepped out, already making calls. Evelyn turned back to the table. Her fingers hovered over the page. 5 people, 5 lives, still out there somewhere. People who had seen the truth with their own eyes. And for 10 years, no one had asked them. Across the city, Marcus Reed sat on the edge of a worn couch, his elbows resting on his knees, watching Lila color at the small table by the window. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. His phone buzzed again, another message, another version of the same story. Unverified connections. Questions about intent. Concerns raised. Marcus didn't open it. He didn't need to. He already knew what it would say. Lila looked up. Is it bad? She asked. Marcus met her eyes. Just noise, he said. She frowned slightly. I don't like noise, she said. Marcus smiled faintly. Me neither. A knock came at the door. Marcus stood slowly, walking over and opening it just a crack. A neighbor. Mrs. Alvarez. Her coat pulled tight against the cold. Marcus, she said quietly. I saw the news. He nodded once. It's not what they're saying, she added quickly. I know that. Marcus gave a small, grateful smile. Thank you, he said. She hesitated. You need anything? She asked. Marcus shook his head. We're all right. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. You always are, she said. And then she was gone. Marcus closed the door gently. He stood there for a second, then turned back toward the room, toward his daughter, toward the life he had built piece by piece, without anyone's help, without anyone's approval, and now, under someone else's spotlight. Across the Hudson, the search didn't take long. Claire came back into the office just before sunset, her face pale, her phone still in her hand. I found them, she said. Evelyn looked up immediately. Where? Still in New Jersey, Claire replied. Small town, the Reyes family. Evelyn's heart skipped. They stayed? She asked. Claire nodded. Same address, same names. Evelyn didn't wait. Get me a number. Claire already had it. She placed the phone on the table, sliding it toward Evelyn. Evelyn stared at it for a moment. She didn't move. Because this was it. Not a document, not a theory. Real people, real memory, real truth. Her hand hovered over the phone. Then she picked it up. Dialed. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, a voice. Hello. It was older, worn, but steady. Evelyn swallowed. Mr. Reyes? She said. A pause. Yes, the man replied cautiously. Who is this? Evelyn's grip tightened slightly. My name is Evelyn Carter, she said. You don't know me, but I believe my husband saved your family 12 years ago. Silence. Not the kind that meant the call had dropped. The kind that meant something had landed. Hard. Ma'am, the man said slowly. What did you say your name was? Evelyn Carter. Another pause. Longer this time, then the sound of someone sitting down heavily. You're calling about him, Mr. Reyes said. Not a question, a realization. Evelyn's breath caught. Yes, she said softly. I am. She heard movement on the other end. Another voice in the background. A woman. What is it? She asked. Then closer. Who is it? Mr. Reyes didn't answer her right away. Instead, he said quietly into the phone. We never knew his name. Evelyn's eyes closed for a moment. He didn't give it, Mr. Reyes continued. There wasn't time. The woman's voice came closer. What are you talking about? She asked. Then, put it on speaker. A click. Now 2 voices. Ma'am, the woman said, her tone trembling. Are you saying you know who that man was? Evelyn's throat tightened. Yes, she said. A breath, then, he was my husband. Silence, and then, a sound Evelyn would never forget. A grown woman breaking down on the other end of the line. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." Mr. Reyes spoke again, his voice rough now. "We looked for him," he said. "For years. We asked everyone. No one could tell us." Evelyn pressed her hand against the table to steady herself. "They told me he died in a helicopter operation," she said. "They told me it was official." Another pause. Then, "That's not what happened," Mr. Reyes said firmly. Evelyn's eyes opened. "What did you see?" she asked. She needed to hear it, needed it spoken out loud. "He came down the cliff," Mr. Reyes said. "In the storm. Everyone else stayed back. Said it was too dangerous." His voice shook, but he didn't. Evelyn's breath came shallow. "He reached the car," he continued. "Pulled the kids out first, one by one. Kept talking to them so they wouldn't panic." Evelyn's vision blurred. "What did he say?" she whispered. There was a pause, then the woman spoke. "He told my daughter," she said, her voice breaking. "Being brave means you're scared. But you do it anyway." Evelyn staggered back slightly. Her hand flew to her mouth because there it was, again. Unmistakable. Real. "He said that," she whispered. "Yes," the woman replied. "She still says it. Every time she's afraid." Evelyn felt something inside her break and heal at the same time. "We named our son after him," Mr. Reyes added quietly. Evelyn froze. "What?" "We didn't know his name," he said. "So we called him Angel. Because that's what he was to us." Tears spilled down Evelyn's face. Across the room, Claire stood frozen, one hand covering her mouth. "He saved all of us," Mr. Reyes continued. "And then the ground gave out. He pushed that Navy guy clear, and then he was gone." Evelyn couldn't speak, couldn't move, because now there was no doubt, no confusion, no uncertainty. The truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was alive, carried by people who had never forgotten. "Ma'am," Mrs. Reyes said softly. "What are you trying to do?" Evelyn wiped her face slowly. "I'm trying to tell the truth," she said. A pause. Then we'll help you," Mr. Reyes said immediately. No hesitation, no fear. Evelyn blinked. "You understand what that means?" she asked. "This could become very public." "We don't care," Mrs. Reyes said. Her voice was stronger now. "He saved our children. We will not let them erase him." Evelyn closed her eyes again, because for 10 years, she had thought she was alone, and now, she wasn't. She never had been. When the call ended, the room was silent. Evelyn stood there, the phone still in her hand. Claire stepped forward slowly. "That's your proof," she said. Evelyn nodded, but her voice was quieter now. "It's more than that," she said. She looked out the window, at the city, at everything she had built, and everything she had lost. "He didn't die alone," she said. And for the first time in 10 years, that truth felt bigger than the lie. But as the sun dipped below the skyline, another realization settled in. If the truth could be found this easily, then someone had made sure it stayed buried, and people who worked that hard to hide something didn't just give up, which meant the next move wasn't hers, it was theirs. It came faster than Evelyn expected. 2 days, that was all it took. By the third morning, the story had shifted. Not completely, not enough to erase what she had found, but enough to muddy it. Evelyn stood in her office, the early light cutting across the glass walls as Claire placed a tablet in front of her. "They're not denying anything," Claire said quietly. Evelyn picked it up. Her eyes scanned the article. Sources close to the Carter family suggest emotional distress may be influencing recent claims. Unverified accounts from unrelated parties. Questions raised about credibility. Evelyn let out a slow breath. There it was, not a defense, a strategy. "They're not fighting the truth," she said. Claire nodded. "They're attacking you," she replied. Evelyn set the tablet down. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. Sharp, controlled, but something deeper beneath it now. They're trying to make it so no one believes me, she said. Claire hesitated. And Marcus, she added. Evelyn's gaze sharpened instantly. What about him? Claire tapped the screen again, pulling up another article. This one was worse, more personal. Navy officer with limited financial means. Recently seen residing near Carter properties. Questions about motive. Young daughter now part of the arrangement. Evelyn's hand tightened around the edge of the desk. They brought his daughter into it, she said. Her voice had gone cold, not angry, controlled, and far more dangerous. Claire didn't respond. She didn't need to, because they both knew. This wasn't just about stopping the story. It was about destroying the people telling it. Across the river, Marcus Reed stood outside the community kitchen, the wind cutting through his jacket as he read the same words on his phone. He didn't move for a long time. Traffic passed behind him. People walked by, glancing at him without recognition. But he stayed still, reading, processing. Lila stepped out beside him, her small hand slipping into his. Is it about us? She asked quietly. Marcus looked down at her. There was no fear in her eyes, just curiosity and trust. He exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said. She nodded, like she had expected that. They don't know us, she said. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. No, he said softly. They don't. She looked back at the street. Then why are they talking like they do? Marcus didn't answer right away, because there wasn't an easy answer. Instead, he crouched down in front of her, meeting her at eye level. Sometimes, he said carefully, people tell stories that make them feel safer. Lila frowned. Even if they're not true? Marcus gave a small, sad smile, especially then. She thought about that, then nodded. Okay. She squeezed his hand once. I still know who you are. Marcus swallowed. Because that mattered more than anything in that article. But it didn't make the problem go away. Back in Manhattan, Evelyn didn't hesitate. Get Marcus here, she said. Claire blinked. Now, yes. Claire nodded and stepped out immediately. Evelyn turned back to the window. The city stretched out in front of her, cold, unforgiving, and suddenly, very familiar, because she had built her entire life in a world that worked exactly like this: control the narrative, control the outcome. But this time, she wasn't on the outside looking in. She was the one being rewritten. An hour later, Marcus stood in her office again. Lila sat quietly in the corner, her legs swinging slightly as she looked out over the skyline. Marcus didn't sit. He didn't need to. You saw it, Evelyn said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. Yeah, he said. A beat. They move fast. Evelyn let out a faint breath. Faster than most people expect. Marcus studied her. You've dealt with this before, he said. Evelyn met his eyes. For 10 years, she replied. Silence settled between them. Then Marcus nodded slowly. All right, he said. So what's the plan? Evelyn paused. Because there it was, the moment where everything changed. Before, this had been her fight. Now, it wasn't just hers anymore. They're trying to discredit us, she said. Make it so the truth doesn't matter. Marcus shrugged slightly. Then we don't let them, he said. Evelyn's lips pressed together. It's not that simple, she replied. They have resources, influence, people who will repeat whatever version they put out. Marcus didn't argue. He just stood there. Steady, so do you, he said. Evelyn looked at him. For years, he continued, you've been the one shaping the story. Right? Evelyn didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Marcus nodded once. Then maybe it's time you do it again, he said. Not as advice, not as pressure, just truth. Evelyn turned back toward the window, her mind moving, fast, precise. They think I'm reacting, she said slowly. Marcus stayed quiet. They think I'm emotional, she continued. That this is about grief, that I'll break under pressure. Her reflection in the glass looked different now. Stronger, sharper. They're wrong, she said. Marcus gave a faint smile. I figured, Evelyn turned back to him. This doesn't stay quiet anymore, she said. If they want to make it public, then we make it public on our terms. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. You could feel it. Commitment. All right, he said. Evelyn stepped closer. You need to understand something, she added. Marcus met her gaze. They're going to come after you harder, she said. After your past, your finances, your record, anything they can twist. Marcus nodded. I know, and Lila, Evelyn said quietly. That landed differently. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. They already have, he said. Evelyn's eyes darkened for a moment. The room felt colder. They don't get to do that, she said. Marcus studied her. People like that don't ask permission, he replied. Evelyn held his gaze. No, she said. They don't. A pause. Then they get stopped. The words were quiet, but absolute. Marcus didn't respond right away because he could see it now. This wasn't just about truth anymore. This was about lines being crossed and what happened next because of it. All right, he said again. This time, there was something different in his voice, something deeper. You lead, he added. I'll stand with you. Evelyn nodded once, then turned to Claire, who had just re-entered the room. Set up a meeting, Evelyn said. With who? Claire asked. Evelyn's expression didn't change. My father-in-law, she replied. Claire froze for a second, then nodded. Okay. As she stepped out again, the room fell quiet. Marcus looked at Evelyn. You think he'll talk? He asked. Evelyn didn't hesitate. He always talks, she said, a beat. He just doesn't always tell the truth. Marcus gave a faint smile. Guess that's about to change. Evelyn looked at him. And for the first time since this began, there was something else in her expression. Not just determination, not just anger, something closer to belief. Yeah, she said softly, it is. Across the city, somewhere behind closed doors, men with power were already planning their next move. But for the first time in 10 years, they weren't the only ones. Because now, the truth had witnesses, and two people who weren't afraid to stand in front of it. And that was something they hadn't accounted for. The meeting was set for noon, not in a boardroom, not in a lawyer's office, but in Evelyn Carter's private study. She had chosen the location deliberately because if the truth was going to be spoken, it would be spoken where the lie had lived. The room was quiet when they arrived. Sunlight poured through tall windows, casting long shadows across shelves lined with books and a single photograph placed at the center of the desk. Daniel, laughing, alive. Marcus stood near the window, his posture steady, Lila beside him, her hand wrapped around his fingers. Evelyn stood across the room, arms crossed, watching the door, waiting. The knock came right on time, sharp, precise. Claire opened it, and Charles Carter walked in. He was older than Evelyn remembered. Not weaker, just worn. His suit was still perfect. His presence still carried weight. But there was something behind his eyes now. Something that hadn't been there 10 years ago. He looked at Evelyn first, then at Marcus, then at Lila. His gaze lingered there for just a moment longer than necessary, then he stepped inside. Evelyn, he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, familiar. Charles, she replied. No warmth, no hesitation, just acknowledgement. He glanced around the room, taking it in. You've made quite a situation for yourself, he said lightly. Evelyn didn't respond. Instead, she gestured toward the desk. Sit, she said. He did, slowly, deliberately. Marcus didn't move, didn't sit. He stayed where he was, watching. Evelyn walked to the desk and placed a folder in front of Charles. He looked down at it, didn't open it, not yet. You've been busy, he said. Evelyn met his gaze. So have you, she replied. A pause. Then, I know about the insurance clause, she said. No build-up, no warning. The words landed clean, direct. Charles's expression didn't change, but something in the room shifted. Subtle, dangerous. That's a complicated document, he said calmly. Evelyn didn't blink. It's not complicated, she replied. It's very clear. Silence. Then she leaned forward slightly. If Daniel died the way you told me he did, the policy pays, a beat. But if he died the way he actually did, her voice didn't rise, didn't shake, then it doesn't. Charles exhaled slowly, still composed, still controlled. You've been speaking to people, he said. Evelyn didn't deny it. Yes, she said. Another pause. And they've filled your head with stories, he added. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't speak. Evelyn straightened. They didn't fill my head, she said. They gave me back the truth. Charles's eyes flickered, just for a second, then steadied again. Truth, he repeated. That's a flexible word. Evelyn's expression hardened. No, she said. It isn't. She reached into the folder and pulled out a document, slid it across the desk. Charles looked down at it now. Finally, a copy of the county report, the Reyes family. Names, dates, details. He read it, slowly, carefully. When he looked back up, the first crack showed. Small, but real. They were never meant to be involved, he said. Evelyn's breath caught. Because there it was, not a denial, an admission. You erased him, she said quietly. Charles didn't answer. Didn't need to. You took the way he died, she continued, and turned it into something that served you. His gaze sharpened slightly. It served the company, he corrected. Evelyn's eyes darkened. It served the money, she said. Silence, heavy, final. Marcus shifted slightly near the window, not stepping forward, not interrupting, just there, a presence, a witness. Charles noticed him again. His gaze flicked toward the silver anchor resting against Marcus's chest. You've carried that a long time, Charles said. Marcus met his eyes. Yes, sir. Charles studied him. Long enough to build a story around it, he added. Marcus didn't react, didn't defend. He just said, I don't need a story. The simplicity of it landed harder than anything else in the room. Charles leaned back slightly. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Evelyn saw it and pressed forward. There's a Navy report, she said. Charles's eyes flicked back to her. Wild that night, she continued. It names a civilian rescuer, a pause. You had it sealed. The words hung there, sharp, irreversible. Charles didn't speak, but the silence said enough. You thought no one would ever find it, Evelyn added. Another pause, then Charles let out a slow breath, defeated, not yet, but closer. You don't understand what you're playing with, he said. Evelyn didn't hesitate. I understand exactly, she replied. Her voice was calm, deadly calm. You built a lie around a man's death. A beat. You built it around my husband's death. Charles's gaze hardened. And what do you want? He asked. There it was, the shift. Not denial, not deflection, negotiation. Evelyn didn't move. "I want the truth," she said. He let out a faint, humorless laugh. "You think truth changes anything?" he asked. Evelyn held his gaze. "Yes," she said. "Silence, then, changes everything." Another pause. Longer this time. He studied her. Really studied her, and something in his expression changed. Not softened, but adjusted, like a man recalculating. "You've always been strong," he said. Evelyn didn't respond. "Stronger than Daniel?" he added. That landed differently, but she didn't let it show. "He believed in things that didn't matter," Charles continued. Evelyn's voice cut in. "They mattered to him." Silence. Then, Charles looked back at Marcus, at the anchor, at the quiet man standing in a room that didn't belong to him, and didn't need to. "What you're asking," Charles said slowly, "it doesn't just expose a mistake." Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "It exposes a choice," she said. "A beat, and you made it." The room held its breath. Even Lila had gone still, sensing something she couldn't name. Charles leaned forward, hands clasped. "For 10 years, he said. That story has held." Evelyn didn't flinch. "Not anymore." Silence. Then, from the doorway, a voice. "I think she's right." All heads turned. A man stood there, older, gray at the temples, still as stone. Claire stepped aside, letting him in. Evelyn recognized him immediately. Harlan Voss, the man who had handled security for the family for decades. The man who knew where everything was buried. Charles's eyes narrowed. "You weren't invited," he said. Voss didn't look at him. He looked at Marcus, at the anchor. For a long moment, then back at Evelyn. "I kept a copy," he said. The words landed like thunder. Evelyn's breath caught. Charles went still. "What?" he said. Voss stepped forward, placing a thin folder on the desk. "The original report," he said. "A beat, and the order to seal it. Silence. Complete. Total." Charles's hand tightened slightly on the armrest. "You had no authority," he began. Voss cut him off. "I had a conscience," he said. "That was new. That was different." Charles stared at him. "What changed?" he demanded. Voss didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at Marcus again, at the anchor. "I saw that," he said quietly, a pause, "and I remembered who I used to be." The room didn't move, didn't breathe. Because in that moment, the balance shifted. Not just legally, not just strategically, morally, the lie that had held for 10 years was breaking, and no amount of power could put it back together. Eva looked down at the folder, at the truth. Finally, fully, in her hands, and for the first time, she wasn't shaking, because now, there was nothing left to hide, and nothing left to fear. The anchor had held, and now, so would the truth. It didn't explode the way Evelyn had once imagined. No courtroom shouting, no flashing cameras crowding the steps of a courthouse. The truth came out differently, quiet, steady, impossible to ignore. 3 weeks later, the story broke, not as scandal, but as revelation. A long-form article, written by a journalist who didn't chase noise but followed facts. It told the story the right way. A man who had been erased, a Navy officer who carried his memory, a widow who refused to let it stay buried, and a family who had lived for 12 years with a debt they couldn't name. By the end of the week, the narrative had shifted completely. The headlines changed, not controversy, not questionable claims, but forgotten hero identified after a decade, widow uncovers truth behind husband's death, act of courage that saved 6 lives. Finally recognized, and at the center of all of it, Daniel Carter, not a clean, polished version of him, not a carefully constructed story, but the real man, the one who climbed down into a storm, the one who didn't wait, the one who didn't need permission to do what was right. The correction to the official record came next. Formal, documented, permanent. The sealed report was reopened, The language changed. Unidentified civilian became a name. A life, a story that could no longer be erased. The insurance case followed quietly. No public trial, no drawn-out battle. Charles Carter signed everything. Restitution, admissions, a statement acknowledging the truth. He didn't do it out of regret. Evelyn knew that. He did it because the truth had finally become stronger than the lie. And he understood. There was no version of this where he won. The money was returned. Every dollar plus interest. Evelyn refused to keep any of it. Instead, she did something else. Something that felt right. The Anchor Hope Foundation was announced 2 months later. Not with a spectacle, not with a gala, but with a simple press release and a quiet event held in a place that meant something. The same Brooklyn community kitchen where Marcus had been showing up for years. The room looked different that day. Cleaned up, chairs set in rows, a small podium near the front. But the feeling hadn't changed. Real, grounded. Evelyn stood at the front, dressed simply again, her voice steady as she spoke. This foundation exists, she said, because one man made a choice when no one was watching. She paused, not for recognition, not for reward, but because it was the right thing to do. The room was quiet, listening. We can't bring him back, she continued, but we can carry forward what he stood for. She glanced toward Marcus. He stood near the back, Lila beside him, her hand wrapped tightly around his. And we can make sure that the kind of courage he showed doesn't disappear with him. Applause followed, not loud, not overwhelming, but sincere. And in that moment, Evelyn felt something shift. For 10 years, her life had been defined by loss. Now, it was being rebuilt by purpose. After the event, people lingered, talking, laughing, eating together, the same way they always had in that space. Marcus stepped outside for a moment, the late afternoon sun warming the sidewalk. He leaned against the brick wall, exhaling slowly. It was over. Or at least, the hardest part of it was. Lila stepped out beside him. Does this mean we're famous now? She asked. Marcus chuckled softly. I hope not, he said. She grinned. Me too. They stood there for a moment, quiet, peaceful. Evelyn joined them a few seconds later. No cameras, no reporters, just her. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him. I meant what I said, she began. Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly. Which part? He asked. Evelyn smiled faintly. About the foundation, she said. I want you involved. Marcus shook his head gently. I don't do titles, he replied. Evelyn nodded. I figured. A pause. But I do know something, she added. Marcus waited. You understand the people this is meant for, she said, better than anyone else I could ask. Marcus looked down the street, thinking, then back at her. I'll help, he said, but not the way you think. Evelyn tilted her head. How? Marcus shrugged slightly. I'll talk to people, he said. Sit with them. Listen. Show up. He glanced at Lila. That's what made the difference for me. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then that's what you'll do. No argument, no negotiation, just agreement. A breeze moved through the street, carrying the sounds of the city with it. Life. Normal, uncomplicated. Evelyn's gaze shifted to the necklace resting against Marcus's chest. The small silver anchor, still there, still worn. I never asked for it back, she said quietly. Marcus followed her gaze. You don't have to, he replied. Evelyn shook her head. I know, a beat. I don't want it back. Marcus looked at her. For a moment, he didn't understand. Then, he did. Someone carried him for me, Evelyn said softly, when I couldn't. Her voice didn't break, didn't falter. It didn't need to. Marcus nodded once, understanding fully now. Lila looked between them, then smiled. Then I guess we're all carrying him now, she said. The simplicity of it landed perfectly. Evelyn laughed softly. Yeah, she said. I think we are. They stood there together for a moment longer. Not as strangers, not as people from different worlds, but as something else, something built on truth, on respect, on a shared understanding of what one man's choice had meant. Across the street, people passed without noticing. Cars moved, lights changed, life continued. But in that small space between them, something had been restored. Not just a name, not just a story, but a legacy. Marcus looked down at Lila, then back at Evelyn. Guess we did all right, he said. Evelyn smiled. We did more than that. She looked out at the city, at everything still ahead. We made it right, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Somewhere far beyond the noise of headlines and headlines fading into memory, a simple truth remained. One act of kindness, one moment of courage, could travel farther than anyone ever imagined. And sometimes, if it was strong enough, it could find its way back home. If this story touched you, leave a comment and let us know. When Marcus Reed chose to keep wearing that small silver anchor, long before he ever knew who Daniel Carter was, he wasn't chasing recognition. He was honoring a life that had once saved his. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't something big or loud. It's choosing to carry forward a moment of courage, even when no one is watching. And one act, done in silence, can ripple through lives you may never even meet. So today, think about one moment in your life. One person who showed you kindness when you needed it most. You don't have to repay them with something grand. Just live a little better because of it. The way Marcus did. Have you ever been helped by someone you never got to thank? Or helped someone without knowing what happened next? Tell me your story in the comments. And stay with me, because the next story might make you see someone you've been overlooking in a completely different way.